I adopted my little sister following our parents' demise, but my girlfriend's not thrilled. It all started last month. The memory of that fateful day still feels like a punch to the gut every time it creeps into my mind. My parents had gone to visit my uncle who lived outside the city. It was supposed to be a simple trip, just a nice day out to catch up with family. They set off early in the morning. The sun was shining, and there was a bit of a nip in the air. I remember waving them goodbye from the front porch, not having the slightest inkling that it would be the last time I'd see them in one piece. They were driving back on this godforsaken, remote road in the middle of the forest. It was the kind of road that hardly anyone ever used. The trees on either side towered so high, it was like they were forming a dark, leafy tunnel. It was late afternoon by then, and the light was starting to fade, casting an eerie shadow over the narrow path. Out of nowhere, a moose, that magnificent yet terrifying beast, bolted across the road. My father, who was behind the wheel, didn't have a second to think. In a split-second decision that would change our lives forever, he swerved at a high speed. The tires screeched against the rough pavement, and the car careened out of control. Next thing I knew, there was a sickening crunch as they crashed headlong into a massive tree trunk. I was at home, going about my normal routine. I just finished making myself a cup of coffee and was settling down on the couch to watch some TV. My phone rang, and when I saw the unknown number, a strange sense of dread washed over me. It was the police. They broke the news as gently as they could, but it still felt like the world had come crashing down around me. I dropped the phone, and my legs gave way beneath me. I crumpled to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. My sister, who's a few years younger than me, was hit even harder. We were both so close to our parents. They were the kind of people who'd always be there for us, through every scrape and every triumph. Dad would take us fishing on weekends, and Mom would bake the most delicious cookies when we were feeling down. Losing them was like losing a part of ourselves. After it happened, my sister went to stay with my grandmother. Now, I've got to be honest, I've never been a fan of that woman. When I was a kid, she had this awful habit of hitting me. Sometimes, I'll admit, I probably deserved it. Like that one time I broke her favorite vase while playing ball in the house. But more often than not, it was completely unjustified. She'd fly off the handle for the tiniest things. I remember once, I was just humming a little too loudly while doing my homework, and she stormed in and slapped me across the face. It left me feeling confused and hurt. Anyway, my grandmother said she didn't want to adopt my sister. So, the next option was me. Without even a moment's hesitation, I agreed. I mean, my sister and I are as thick as thieves. We used to have these secret forts we'd build in the backyard, and we'd share all our hopes and dreams under the covers at night. She's my family, and I love her more than words can say. I'd do anything to protect her and make sure she's okay. So, she moved in with me and my girlfriend. My girlfriend and I, we've been together for 9 long years. We met in high school, and it was love at first sight. She was the girl who made my heart skip a beat every time I saw her. She knew my parents, and they adored her. She'd come over for family dinners, and we'd all laugh and have a great time. She's been a huge part of my life for so long, and she's known my sister since she was born. I really thought we'd be able to handle this situation together. But 2 weeks ago, it started to become clear that things weren't going to be that easy. My sister, obviously, was really scarred by what had happened to our parents. She hardly talked at all, except to me and sometimes my girlfriend. She'd just sit in her room, staring blankly at the wall, her eyes filled with a sadness that was almost too painful to look at. We knew she needed help, so we started taking her to therapy twice a week. The therapist was really good. She had this soothing voice and a way of making my sister feel safe enough to open up. And you know what? Even in that short amount of time, we could see some improvements. She was starting to smile a little more, and every now and then, she'd share a small memory of our parents. But then, yesterday, after I'd stayed with my sister in her bed until she fell asleep, I went to my girlfriend's room. That's when she dropped the bombshell. She said we needed to talk about the situation. She told me that ever since my sister had moved in, we hardly had any time for each other. And she was right. We'd only been intimate once, and that was when my sister was away. And even then, I have to admit, I wasn't really into it. I was so distracted, thinking about my sister and how she was coping. My girlfriend said I should reconsider the adoption and maybe hand my sister over to my uncle and aunt. I was shocked. I mean, I understand where she was coming from. She's in her last year of university, and we don't have a lot of money. I'm lucky I found a job after graduating in my field, and it pays pretty well, but still, it's been tough financially. We've had to cut back on going out to eat and buying new clothes. And soon, I'll start getting funds from the government for adopting my sister. But my uncle, he's got a heart condition and isn't allowed to work. Because he didn't work for long before he was diagnosed, his disability fund isn't much. My aunt works at a retirement home, and that job doesn't work at a retirement home, and that job doesn't pay great. They're already struggling to pay for my cousin's university expenses and take care of my younger cousin, who's only 5. There was no way I could burden them with my sister too. I told my girlfriend all of this. I said that while she had valid points, this was my sister. I couldn't just abandon her because it was difficult. I had to see this through. But I guess that wasn't the right thing to say because it set her off. She then asked me the one question I never wanted to hear. If I had to choose between my sister and her, who would I pick? I didn't answer. I couldn't. How could I choose between the two people I love the most? And that led to a huge verbal fight. Words were flying back and forth, accusations and hurt feelings filling the air. Afterward, I was so frustrated and heartbroken that I just went to sleep on the couch. Lying there, I felt like I was falling apart. All the stress of the past few weeks, the grief over my parents, and now this fight with my girlfriend, it was all too much. I just broke down and cried, my body shaking with sobs as I tried to make sense of it all. The next morning, I woke up on that lumpy couch with a crick in my neck and a pounding headache, as if my body was rebelling against the emotional turmoil I'd endured. The events of the previous night replayed in my mind like a horror movie I couldn't escape. My sister's silent tears, my girlfriend's angry outburst, and that impossible choice she'd forced on me. It all felt so surreal, yet painfully real. I heard a faint rustling from my sister's room and tiptoed over. There she was, curled up in a ball under the covers, clutching a teddy bear that our parents had given her. Her face was streaked with tears, and when she saw me, she tried to wipe them away quickly, as if ashamed to show weakness. My heart shattered into a million pieces. I sat down beside her and gently stroked her hair. Without a word, we held each other, finding some solace in our shared pain. After a while, I got up to make breakfast. As I was cracking eggs into the pan, my girlfriend emerged from our bedroom. She looked as haggard as I felt, with dark circles under her eyes and her hair in disarray. For a brief moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of regret in her eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it had come. We exchanged a tense glance, and then she mumbled something about needing to get ready for class and disappeared back into the room. I served breakfast to my sister, trying to muster up some cheer. I made a smiley face with the scrambled eggs and told her a silly joke I'd heard as a kid. She managed a weak smile, and that small gesture gave me a glimmer of hope. But all the while, my mind was preoccupied with how to mend things with my girlfriend. Once my sister had finished eating, I drove her to school. The ride was silent, save for the soft hum of the car engine. As I dropped her off, I gave her an extra long hug and whispered words of encouragement in her ear. She nodded and walked into the school building, her shoulders slumped, looking so small and vulnerable in the big, bustling world. When I got back home, my girlfriend was still there. She was sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee, staring blankly into space. I took a deep breath and sat down across from her. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity, neither of us knowing where to begin. Finally, she broke the silence. "I'm sorry about last night," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was being selfish and stupid. I didn't mean to put you in that position." A wave of relief washed over me. Maybe there was a chance to salvage our relationship after all. I reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm sorry too," I said. "I know it's been tough on you. But you have to understand, my sister needs me right now. She has no one else." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I do understand. I guess I got scared. Scared that I was losing you to all of this." We talked for hours that morning, baring our souls. I told her about my deepest fears for my sister's future, how I couldn't bear the thought of her feeling unwanted or alone. She listened intently, squeezing my hand every now and then. And she told me about her own insecurities, how the sudden shift in our lives had made her feel left out and unimportant. We came up with a plan. We decided that we'd both make a more concerted effort to balance our time. She'd try to engage with my sister, not as a parental figure, but as a friend. Maybe they could watch movies together, do some arts and crafts, or just chat about girl stuff. And I'd make sure to set aside some quality time for just the two of us, even if it was just a short walk in the park or a cozy dinner at home. But as the days passed, putting our plan into action proved to be more challenging than we'd anticipated. My girlfriend's university workload seemed to multiply overnight. She was constantly buried under textbooks, assignments, and looming exams. The few times she did try to interact with my sister, it felt forced and awkward, like two strangers trying to find common ground. My sister, still grappling with her trauma, was often moody and withdrawn, which didn't make it any easier. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, I came home to find my girlfriend sitting on the couch, crying. She looked up at me with a defeated expression. "I can't do this," she sobbed. "It's too hard. I feel like I'm failing at everything, school, being a good partner to you, and now trying to be there for your sister." I sat down beside her and wrapped my arm around her. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to comfort her, but I also knew that my sister's well-being was still my top priority. It was a no-win situation, and I felt like I was being torn in two. I held my girlfriend tightly as she cried on the couch, her sobs racking her body. I could feel the dampness of her tears soaking through my shirt, and it was like a physical manifestation of the emotional mess we were in. In that moment, I realized just how fragile our relationship had become, like a delicate glass vase teetering on the edge of a table, one wrong move away from shattering into 1,000 pieces. We sat there in silence for what felt like an eternity, the only sound in the room being her soft sniffles and the occasional shuddering breath. I stroked her hair gently, trying to offer some comfort, but my mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. I knew we had to find a solution, and fast, before everything crumbled beyond repair. Finally, I spoke up, my voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we should take a step back and reevaluate things," I said. "We can't keep going on like this, feeling so stressed and unhappy all the time. It's not good for any of us." She nodded, wiping her tears away with the back of her hand. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she looked utterly defeated. "But what about your sister?" she asked, her voice choked with emotion. "I don't know," I admitted. "But we have to think about what's best for everyone, including ourselves. Maybe we can talk to her therapist and see if she has any suggestions. She's been helping my sister so much already. Maybe she can guide us too." The next day, we made an appointment with my sister's therapist. It was a nerve-wracking experience, sitting in that small, stuffy office, waiting for her to arrive. The walls were painted a dull beige, and there were a few framed diplomas and soothing landscape paintings adorning them. When the therapist finally walked in, she greeted us with a warm smile and a kind look in her eyes that immediately put us at ease, if only a little. We poured out our hearts to her, explaining the difficulties we'd been having. I told her about the fights with my girlfriend, the strain on our relationship, and my sister's ongoing struggle to cope with our parents' loss. My girlfriend added her own perspective, talking about her fears of being pushed aside and her overwhelming workload at university. The therapist listened attentively, nodding her head every now and then and jotting down a few notes. When we were done, she leaned back in her chair and thought for a moment. "I understand how challenging this situation is for both of you," she said. "But it's important to remember that your sister is still very fragile. She's lost her parents, and the only stability she has right now is with you two. Abandoning her or making her feel unwanted would be extremely damaging." She then suggested that we try to find some outside help like a babysitter or a part-time nanny to give us a break from time to time. That way, we could have some alone time to recharge and work on our relationship while still ensuring that my sister was taken care of. She also recommended that we continue to communicate openly with each other and with my sister, making sure she felt involved and loved. We left the therapist's office feeling a bit more hopeful. It seemed like a good plan, at least on paper, but finding the right person to take care of my sister wasn't going to be easy. We interviewed several candidates, but none of them seemed quite right. Some were too young and inexperienced, and I was worried they wouldn't be able to handle my sister's emotional needs. Others were too strict or just didn't click with my sister on a personal level. In the meantime, the tension at home continued to mount. My girlfriend and I were constantly on edge, snapping at each other over the smallest things. A misplaced book or a forgotten chore would set off an argument that quickly escalated into a shouting match. My sister could sense the unrest, and it was starting to affect her too. She became even more withdrawn and quiet, spending most of her time in her room, only coming out when necessary. One night, after another heated argument with my girlfriend, I went to check on my sister. I knocked softly on her door and opened it when I didn't hear a response. She was lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling, tears streaming down her cheeks. When she saw me, she sat up and hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry I'm causing so many problems," she sobbed. I wish I could go away so you and girlfriend could be happy again." Hearing her say that broke my heart. I held her close and told her it wasn't her fault, that we all just needed to figure things out together. But deep down, I knew we were running out of time. Something had to give, or we'd all end up miserable. The next day, I got a call from my uncle. He had heard about our situation from my grandmother and wanted to offer his help. He said he and my aunt could take my sister for a few weeks, just to give us a breather. I was hesitant at first, remembering how busy they were, but he assured me they could manage to. I talked to my girlfriend about it, and she was relieved. She thought it was the best option we had at the moment, but I couldn't help feeling a sense of guilt. I was worried that my sister would feel abandoned again, even if it was only for a short time. Nevertheless, we decided to take my uncle up on his offer. The day we dropped my sister off at their house, she looked so small and scared. I hugged her tightly and promised her we'd come back for her soon. As we drove away, I saw her standing in the driveway, waving goodbye, and my heart ached. Back at home, it was strangely quiet. My girlfriend and I had all the time in the world to ourselves, but it didn't feel right. We were both still tense and on edge, and the silence between us was deafening. It was as if a part of our family was missing, and we didn't know how to fill the void. The first few days without my sister at home were agonizingly quiet. The silence seemed to echo through the empty rooms, amplifying the loneliness and unease that hung in the air. My girlfriend and I moved around each other like ghosts, our footsteps barely making a sound as we navigated the house we once shared with laughter and warmth. We tried to make small talk, but it always felt forced, like two strangers trying to fill an awkward void. I found myself constantly checking my phone, every notification making my heart skip a beat in anticipation of news from my uncle about how my sister was doing. He'd send me a text here and there, accompanied by a photo or a short video. In one, my sister was helping my aunt in the kitchen, her small hands covered in flour as she kneaded dough for cookies. In another, she was playing with my younger cousin in the yard, a hesitant smile on her face. She looked okay, but I could still see the sadness lurking in her eyes, that same look of loss and longing she'd had when she first came to live with us. It tore my heart all over again. My girlfriend, too, seemed lost. She'd sit on the couch for hours, staring blankly at the TV screen, not really watching whatever show was playing. The remote control would lie untouched beside her, as if she didn't have the energy or the will to change the channel. One evening, as we were eating dinner in silence, the clinking of our cutlery against the plates the only sound, she finally spoke up. "I miss her," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the background noise of the refrigerator humming. I looked up from my plate, surprised. "I do too," I replied, my voice equally soft. More than I thought I would. We sat there for a moment, just looking at each other. It was as if we'd both finally acknowledged the elephant in the room. Our relationship had been so consumed by stress and conflict that we'd forgotten how much my sister had become an integral part of our lives. She was the one who'd make us laugh with her silly jokes during dinner, or draw us pictures that she'd proudly display on the fridge. The next day, we decided to do something about it. We got in the car and drove to my uncle's house to visit my sister. The journey there was filled with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. What would her reaction be? Would she be angry with us for leaving her? When we arrived, we saw her outside in the yard playing with a ball. She looked up as the car pulled into the driveway, and her face lit up with a huge, genuine smile. She dropped the ball and came running towards us, her arms open wide. I jumped out of the car and scooped her up in a big bear hug. My girlfriend followed suit, and soon we were all wrapped up in a group hug, tears streaming down our faces, tears of joy, relief, and regret. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. We spent the whole day there, playing games with my sister and my cousins. We built a makeshift fort in the living room out of blankets and chairs, and my sister's laughter filled the room as we pretended to be pirates on a treasure hunt. We helped my aunt with the cooking, my sister carefully measuring out ingredients while my girlfriend and I chopped vegetables. And we just enjoyed each other's company, savoring the simple pleasure of being together. When it was time to leave, my sister clung to us, her small arms wrapped tightly around our necks. "Please don't leave me again," she begged, her voice trembling. I knelt down in front of her and looked her in the eye. "We won't, sweetheart, I promised. We're going to figure this out together. You're coming home with us soon." On the drive back, my girlfriend and I talked about how we could make things work. We realized that we needed to be more patient and understanding with each other, and most importantly, with my sister. We made a detailed plan to set aside specific times for family activities. Friday nights would be movie nights, complete with popcorn and cozy blankets. Saturdays we'd have game nights, pulling out old board games like Monopoly and Scrabble. And on Sundays, we'd take a long walk in the park, breathing in the fresh air and enjoying nature. We also decided that we continue to work with my sister's therapist, not just for her sake, but for ours too. We needed to learn how to communicate better, how to handle stress as a family. When we got home, we started putting our plan into action. We redecorated my sister's room to make it more inviting and comforting. We painted the walls a soft, pastel color that she loved, hung up new posters of her favorite cartoons, and replaced the old, worn-out rug with a fluffy one. We bought her new books and toys, carefully selecting items that we thought would spark her imagination and bring her joy. And we hung up pictures of our family all over the house, creating a visual reminder of the love and connection we shared. My girlfriend even started baking cookies with my sister on weekends, something they both seemed to enjoy immensely. The smell of freshly baked cookies would fill the house, and they'd giggle as they decorated them with frosting and sprinkles. Slowly but surely, things started to get better. My sister's mood improved significantly. She started talking more, sharing stories about her day at school and the new friends she'd made. Her smile became a regular occurrence, lighting up her face and our hearts. My girlfriend and I were still working on our relationship, but the tension had eased considerably. We were communicating better, actually listening to each other's concerns and ideas. We were both more committed to making our family work, to creating a loving and stable environment for my sister. One night, a few weeks later, we were all sitting on the couch, watching a movie together. My sister was snuggled up between us, a bowl of popcorn in her lap, laughing at the funny parts. I looked over at my girlfriend and saw her smiling too, her eyes filled with contentment. In that moment, I knew that we'd been through a lot, but we'd come out stronger on the other side. Our family wasn't perfect, and we still had a long way to go. But we were on the right track, and that was all that mattered. We had each other, and we were determined to make it through whatever life threw our way. As the weeks rolled on, our new routine became the glue that held us together. Friday movie nights were a particular highlight. We'd dim the lights, snuggle up on the couch with a big bowl of popcorn, and lose ourselves in the world of make-believe on the screen. My sister would always have a running commentary, asking questions about the characters and making predictions that sometimes had us in stitches. One night, during a particularly action-packed adventure film, she gasped and clutched my arm tightly, her eyes wide with excitement. "Look, they're going to find the hidden treasure," she exclaimed, and in that moment, her enthusiasm was infectious, filling the room with a warmth that had been missing for far too long. Saturdays were reserved for game nights, and it was amazing to see how competitive my sister could be. She'd roll the dice in Monopoly with a fierce determination, haggling over properties and trading with us like a shrewd businesswoman. When we played Scrabble, she'd furrow her brow in concentration, trying to come up with the most elaborate words she could think of. One time, she managed to spell quixotic, and then proceeded to explain to us what it meant, her face beaming with pride at her newfound vocabulary. These evenings were filled with laughter and good-natured teasing, and it felt like we were finally starting to heal as a family. Sundays in the park were a chance for us to unwind and connect with nature. We'd stroll along the winding paths, breathing in the fresh air and stopping to admire the blooming flowers. My sister would run ahead, chasing after butterflies, her hair streaming behind her like a golden banner. She'd come back to us, clutching a small bouquet of wildflowers she'd picked, and present them to my girlfriend and me with a big smile. "These are for you, to make our house even prettier," she'd say, and it was these simple gestures that reminded us of the beauty and innocence that still existed in our lives. My girlfriend and I were also making significant strides in our relationship. We started going on short dates again, just the two of us. Sometimes it was a quiet dinner at a local cafe, where we'd hold hands across the table and talk about everything and nothing. Other times, we'd take a walk along the riverfront, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. These moments alone were crucial, allowing us to reconnect and remember why we had fallen in love in the first place. One evening, after putting my sister to bed, we sat on the porch swing, sipping mugs of warm tea. The night air was cool and filled with the gentle chirping of crickets. My girlfriend leaned her head on my shoulder and sighed contentedly. "I can't believe how far we've come," she said softly. "I was so scared we were going to lose each other in sister's name, but now I feel like we're stronger than ever." I nodded, wrapping my arm around her. It hasn't been easy, but it was worth it. We've all grown so much through this. The support from our friends and family also played a vital role. My uncle and aunt would often invite us over for barbecues, and my sister loved playing with her cousins in their big backyard. Our neighbors, too, noticed the change in our household and would drop by with homemade treats or offers to babysit. It was heartwarming to see the community rally around us, providing the extra love and care we needed. School was going well for my sister. She had made a couple of really close friends, and her teachers were impressed with her progress. She was starting to participate more in class, raising her hand to answer questions and sharing her thoughts. Her confidence was growing, and it was a joy to watch. One day, she came home with a drawing she had made in art class. It was a picture of our family, all holding hands and smiling. She handed it to me with a shy smile. "This is for you, to show you how much I love our family," she said, and I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes as I looked at the colorful depiction of our newfound happiness. We continued to work with my sister's therapist, not just for her, but for all of us. The sessions were a safe space where we could express our fears, frustrations, and hopes. We learned valuable communication skills, how to listen without judgment, and how to express our emotions in a healthy way. My girlfriend and I also had a few one-on-one sessions, which helped us address the deeper issues that had been simmering beneath the surface. As the months passed, the pain of losing my parents still lingered, but it no longer consumed us. Instead, we focused on creating new memories, building a future filled with love and laughter. We knew there would be more challenges ahead, but we were ready to face them together. Our family, once on the brink of falling apart, was now a testament to the power of love, forgiveness, and perseverance. One sunny Saturday afternoon, as we were all in the backyard playing a game of catch, my sister looked up at me and my girlfriend with a big grin. "I'm so happy we're a family," she said, and in that moment, I knew that all the hardships we had endured had led us to this beautiful place. We were a family, and nothing could change that.